The reason that Brian's case is a concern is that he is a born US citizen where his citizenship, from my perspective, is not at question. He was born at a hospital. He has his birth records, he has his baptismal certificate, and he has a certified birth certificate from the state of Colorado. He is living and working in Texas, and he's a Hispanic passenger in a work truck, which gets pulled over for what they say is a seatbelt violation by DPS. And between DPS and the state troopers, he is detained and transferred over several days, ultimately into the hands of Border Patrol, who forces him to sign a piece of paper accepting a deportation under duress. And throughout this entire series of events, he repeated to the various agencies that he was born in the United States, that he was a US citizen. And he was threatened by the officers that if he kept lying to them, that they would put him in jail for several years. And so ultimately he stopped talking and signed their paperwork. And now he is in Mexico, desperately wanting to be back in the United States. And we have, as his attorneys, have filed a lawsuit asking the judge to order that he can come back with a birth certificate. And we're also seeking damages for what happened to him. There have been some delays on what we're asking for from the court, and I understand the judges being cautious, and we respect that. But ultimately, if we start to live in a country where U.S. citizens with valid paperwork can get detained and deported, and then told post-deportation that the burden is higher on them to prove their citizenship, that obviously could have far-reaching implications on a lot of other people, and it shouldn't be on us as U.S. citizens, number one, to carry our documentation on us if we're just living our lives out in the world. There isn't a law that says that, and we don't want to live in a society that can require that. Number two, in the rare circumstance, let's hope it stays rare, where somebody is mistakenly deported, they should be brought back immediately without having to go through so many hoops to get back. And that's one of the things that I think is ultimately concerning for me about this case.
I got one question. Um, even if you're an immigrant, you still have a right to an attorney, and he could still ask at any point of this. He could ask. He asked for an attorney. This would be able to stop it. Am I correct? I'm not a lawyer, but I'm.
Actually, no, no, he was not being held. He was threatened with criminal charges, but he wasn't charged criminally ever. And it's only criminal cases that provide free legal representation. So he didn't have a right to a lawyer. Now, could he have forced it and said, charge me, called their bluff? Yeah, but he didn't know. He's a young guy who was unaware of this risk even out there for him. And he has a young child, a new baby. He's responsible for this baby's livelihood and life, and didn't want to be in jail for 5 years. He believed them when they said that to him. And so no, he didn't have the right to a lawyer.
Also, you mentioned you still have documentation. I mean, aren't we supposed to have documentation everywhere we go? I mean, if you drive a car, you're supposed to have a license. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, yes, there are certain things in this country that require you to have an ID. Traveling, flying, driving a car, certain other things, entering into certain buildings, for example. But riding in a car, walking down the street, leaving your house, absolutely not. You absolutely do not have to have your ID on you at all times in this country. And I shudder to think how far we will have fallen if we find ourselves in a country where you can be stopped and forced to show your ID at any time to any law enforcement officer in a country where we've already allowed racial profiling. by the Supreme Court of the United States. So let's hope we don't find ourselves in that situation as a nation. That would be very bad.
Does this go into the Trump administration's birthright case that's going through the courts right now? Is that the Supreme Court level?
No, Brian would be, although he did benefit from birthright citizenship. He was born in the United States. He's 25 years old, and his right to citizenship is not impacted by this executive order, even if it were allowed to move forward by the courts, because it's not a retroactive policy.
So where does he stand right now? He's still in Mexico.
He's in Mexico. We had a hearing this week before the judge, and what the judge said is, I'd like the two sides to work together. There was agreement that if we agree that he's a U.S. citizen, that he should not have been deported and he should be brought back. And so the judge has asked us to work with the Department of Justice to provide as much evidence as we can of Brian's citizenship. And we can do that, and we are complying. There is plenty of evidence. But again, the concern that I have is that if this happens again to the next person, requiring additional evidence beyond a birth certificate, like fingerprints or an affidavit of your mother or something like that, we might be asking for too much from the wrong person, meaning we ought to be asking the government to do its diligence before it decides to detain and deport someone, not post-deportation asking a U.S. citizen to provide more evidence proving their citizenship. I think that is a step in the wrong direction.
A lot of questions are the agencies that, because we always came up with this because the Texas governor here wanted officers to work with ICE, and circumstances like this happen. And this is what we did not want. He went through how many agencies before he ended up being deported?
3 agencies. He was detained by DPS, Gillespie Sheriff, and CBP.
Gillespie Sheriff was the first ones that pulled him over originally, correct?
I think it was DPS that pulled him over, but it was kind of together. It was DPS and Gillespie Sheriff were working together that day.
And so, how long do you think it's going to be till he can come back to the United States? Do you have any idea?
I imagine this will be achieved quickly within a couple of weeks, and we will be celebrating his return and also hopefully sending a message to DHS that they should not start to engage in the business of deporting U.S. citizens.
And while we talked about this, we know about the Dilley Immigration Detention Center and the problems we had there in the past. And now you have the same thing going on in New Jersey with the immigration center there. And it seems like Homeland Security is coming up with their own rules. Even if they're breaking constitutional rules, even if you're in jail, you still have rights.
Yeah, I mean, this is what we have come to expect from the Trump administration, is to enrich private prison companies on the indefinite detention of innocent people and children, to provide them inadequate medical care, sometimes leading to their deaths, inadequate ambient care, cold environments, hot environments, not enough food and clothing, not enough shelter, not enough adequate food, and to wait to be sued and told by the courts that they can't do that when the courts will step in, even though there are plenty of rules and regulations already in place limiting their ability to mistreat people in this way. But unfortunately, Congress keeps voting for more funding for DHS, and the Trump administration adopts a policy of asking for forgiveness rather than permission when it comes to human rights abuses. Not that they ask for forgiveness, but they wait to have their hands smacked by the courts rather than proactively thinking about what would be the right thing to do, or what the limitations on them are legally already. And so we see that over and over and over again. And that's why the support for this administration is at the lowest it's been the whole time, and also for any president in decades. And that's why these midterms are going to be so important.
Is it scary that the Blanche, the head of Homeland Security, says that we might abide by the court or we might not? Now, and he also said that we should not be providing ethnic food towards people that are in detention.
Yeah, I mean, um, anybody who's paying attention is concerned about the fragility of our democracy. And one of the indicators that it is falling will be when the administration outright defies a court ruling, because the administration controls the army. The courts don't control the army. So that will be an indicator. Another indicator could be when we don't have free and fair elections. And those are both things that are very possible in the short-term future. And all of us, I think, are feeling a little on edge about it.
Hey, thank you so much for taking us. I'm hoping we get the word when you get free, because this is just I don't know. I don't know what to say. I tell people, I tell African Americans, I think that yes, this is something that's just not our problem. I think it is the problem, racial profiling, because it can happen to anybody. It can happen to you, you know. So I think everybody should be on the edge about what's going on right now.
Yeah, I mean, well, and we all know it's been the problem of the Black community for, well, the whole history of this nation. And now it's more people's problems too. And so hopefully we can all work together in solidarity to stop these abuses.
All right. Hey, thank you so much for taking my phone call again. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you so much for having me. Bye.